All right, everybody, welcome back for week 14, chapter 12. This will probably be the last video for this course. It's not open yet, and you can't see the coming up. And next week, it's really just a book teaching you about the different ways to program specific applications for specific products like iOS and Android. I don't think there will be a project, but there is a quiz and the self-test exercises next week. Week following, I really just want you to work on your final. If you have something that you want me to take a look at, it's not working, whatever, submit it up here and I'll give you some feedback. And then the last week is just the final app. So we're almost done. This is really the last project you'll do. And this week we're talking about maps, location, and multimedia databases. The more you research this subject, you will find that Google has it pretty much locked down. Any project that deals with maps, geolocation, tracking, directions, all that stuff really uses the Google APIs. I would have done a project with using Google APIs because I think it's a skill that if you continue on, you will want to know. But Google requires that you put in a credit card and all this stuff, and I didn't want to put you guys through that, so we're not. Google does give you $200 worth of transactions every month, where it's not going to charge you for $200 worth of stuff. But since there's a credit card in there, and if you're not paying attention or somebody else gets a hold of your API key and starts using it, it could rack up a bill and then you have to pay it. And we don't want to deal with that. So we're going to do some simple stuff this week using geolocation. And the first thing that I wanted to show you is what the browser will do natively. Like, you don't need any tools or anything else. If you go to inspect your page, and again, I'm using, I always use Firefox, zoom in. I always use Firefox, but if you right click, go to inspect, and down here will be your console, or you can just hit console up here and it'll just be just the console. And you can do this in most browsers. There is something called the navigator. And then you can, with navigator, you can, what is it? Get geolocation, get current position, and then just console log that information and hit enter. You'll get this pop up here that says, allow. You have to allow it. The user has to let it go unless the settings are automatically by default set to allow location access. But this is giving the lenoirelcc.edu access to your location. If you click allow, you'll get a response here. And it shows you your coordinates, latitude and longitude, with an accuracy rating. And I don't understand that. What does 3744 mean as far as an accuracy rating? I don't know. And a timestamp. So just using your browser, every site that you go to can access your information. And when we're talking about geolocation with IP addresses, it's not an exact science. There's a ton of geolocation tools where you can put an IP address and get a location. They are not even close to 100%, but they get that information. Well, first off, the IP addresses are not static. Most of the time, they're dynamic, so they will change over time. But all your web interactions, your shopping, purchases, everything you do online, I won't say all of them, but most of them sell your information or sell that anonymized information, quote unquote. So they don't necessarily know who it belongs to, but they know somebody with this IP address purchased something, and they kind of aggregate all this stuff and they can kind of narrow it down to a location where you're at. It's never exact. Sometimes it's way off. But that's how geolocation with IP addresses is done. Now there's a caveat to that. Now mobile devices, the IoT, Internet of Things, all the little devices that are stuck in a certain spot, they know whose account they are, they know what address that goes to. That lends to some accuracy. I know a while back there was a way to search in your phone and see all the devices that like your iPhone has connected to. You can just walk down the street, iPhones talk to each other, and that's further geolocation stuff. Anyway, that's well beyond this course, and I'm getting off on a tangent. So we're going to use this data right here to create this little application And all it's going to do is run that function when you click a button, you allow it access, it gives you your coordinates, and then we are going to use an API that you have to sign up for, but it is free. It gives you an API key, and it will resolve an address for that. This is this is what it says my IP is for my current location. This is not a correct address, but it's pretty close. And I wonder if I switch on my VPN. Hold on. Wait for it to pop up, and then I'll rerun this and see what happens. See if it's close. Sorry, it's taking some time. All right, I am connecting to a VPN somewhere in Charlotte. So let's see. I refresh this. Click a button. Lincoln County, that's right. Let's see if I connect to somewhere in Brazil. Then I refresh the page, click the button, allow. Yep, Brazil. I don't know what those words are, but anyway, so it works, and I can see as I use my VPN that my location changes. Talking about Google for just a second. Like I said, Google kind of has a dominant role in the APIs for location stuff. They specialize in maps. That's what they're known for. And you can do all kinds of things with their APIs if you want to sign up and use that. Routes, directions, roads, maps, places, pictures, all kinds of good stuff. With that quick little tidbit that we did, a little code that you did in the browser navigator, you can then take those coordinates and convert it in a, this is just a long.net. You plug those coordinates in and it gives you an address. But we're going to skip that, and we're going to use OpenCage geocoding. This is opencagedata.com. If you sign up, you get an API key for free, and there's no credit card needed. It's super easy. And then we can do this little project here. All right, so let's hop into Visual Studio. Create a new folder on my desktop. Call it location, and then open that folder. Like I said, this will be a pretty quick video, I think. Anyway, I'm gonna create this new file, name it index HTML. We're not gonna mess with Express or Node or any of that stuff this week. This should just be a simple project. Forgot my little exclamation point there. Why is it not auto-completing for me? Probably messed something up. At any rate, map stuff. If we want, you'll probably want some CSS in here. I think what happened is I created the file and just named it new file with no extension, and now that I've renamed it, it doesn't autocomplete for me, but it's not a big deal. It's 12, right? 12 CSS. Just in case I want some CSS, you will need at least one JavaScript file. You don't, if you feel like just sticking them all in one location, you don't need these extra folders, but I'm just going to stick with what I always do. I'm not going to worry about the character settings. No, we'll do no, just do a content this time. Make a little table just to hold some data. Man, this is all messed up. I just need a place for the latitude, longitude. I'm gonna have to give this one an ID so we can fill it in. It doesn't like this. Let's see if I can save it and close it and then open it back up real quick. A little better. Let's say row. All right, now it's working. Longitude. And give this one an ID too. Long. Nothing in it. That's all I need for the table. Close out this div too while I'm thinking about it. And then I'm going to put a button in that calls a function when I click it. And I'm gonna call that function F. And then I'm just gonna copy all this. Control C, Control V. I don't need the header. I don't need the table. Don't need the button. I do need the header. I don't need any of this though. And then just a little div with an ID of address. And that's where I'll have the JavaScript write the information. So save that. And that will be the HTML page. Super simple. Now I'm gonna add two folders, JS and CSS. And in JavaScript, I'm going to create a new JavaScript file. And here we're just going to create a function. View in CTI1. Call it nav. This is the one that will be called when you click that button. And we're going to do just like I showed you in the browser. It's going to be navigator.geolocation.get current position. And then when we get that position, so this is going to call, this calls out and gets your position. When the position is returned, we're going to call it position, make it a variable, and then send it to a function, arrow function. We'll take the latitude from that, so it's going to be the results coming back. We've named position, and they are chords.latitude. Now, if you don't understand that, and I'll take a second to show you. Let's just do this. This is our return. When we did we just put this in the console and let it run, and this is what it sent back. So we're naming this whole response position as a variable. And then under position, you can see it's got chords, and then latitude and longitude. So that's what those period, that dot is. That's what it's getting: position, chord, latitude. And is it chord or chords? Make sure you do it right, chords. So we're calling that specific item in the return. And then we need the longitude, same thing. And we can do a few. If you want to make sure it's working, you can log some stuff to the console, but you don't necessarily need to. Get the element with the ID of lat. And then we're going to insert in the inner HTML. Okay, the latitude. It's a variable. So it's going to write the latitude variable. Now we could just do this instead of making it a variable, and then get rid of that line of code right there. I don't know if that's cleaner. Maybe it is. Let's do that. Let's do that. Well, actually, we're going to need that. We're going to need those latitude and longitudes later. So we'll just keep it like this. All right, so this function, if we save it and we open up our HTML index.html, it looks like this. No big deal. We got our divs, longitude, latitude, where am I? If we click the button, it asks us to allow the location sharing, and it will populate the longitude and latitude in that table that we made. Super cool. What we're going to do now is have it reach out to the what was it called? OpenCage geocoding. We're going to reach out to them. Now, after you sign up, get your API key, or if you just use mine, you can get in here, and there's a ton of documentation that's really good to use, and it kind of gives you right here how the API queries are formatted. And we've done this before in another project with where we made an API call. I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but we did the very same thing. And it will return JSON response. So we are going to do something else. So that that request or that API call. Let me go back there. I'm going to copy that. So we're going to do a reverse, right? We're taking a latitude and longitude and we're trying to get an address instead of an address to latitude and longitude. That's considered reverse. And that's going to be our URL. We need a few things in here. See, like this lat and this long are variables. So we need to, yeah, it won't work that way. So we need to break this up a little bit. I'm going to do a plus lat, which because ours is lowercase. I'm going to get rid of this one. And then we got to have that little plus sign in there. So don't miss that. I spent a good little while trying to figure out what was wrong with my API call because there's supposed to be a little plus in there. And as you're concatenating with pluses, they get lost. And the API key goes in here. I don't know my API key. No, it should be and key equals the API key. And then at the end, I noticed a few things when I was doing this, that there's a language and English. I'm just going to add this on the end here. Oh, you can't even see what I'm doing. Let me make this so you can see what I'm doing. At the end of the call, you see lat long and key equals API key. And then there was this little bit of stuff left at the end of the query when you actually get the stuff back. It adds a language, the ampersand language equals EN for English, I'm sure. And then another ampersand pretty equals 1. I don't know what that does. I imagine it makes it look pretty for you. But that's the way it was looking on the websites when I was doing testing. So I'm just going to leave that in there and I know it works. All right, then what? We can, when I was doing a lot of troubleshooting, I had to log a lot of stuff to the console. So here you can see, I wanted to make sure that the latitude and longitude variables being passed into this URL were working properly, coming from the return response being stored as variables and everything else. So I did the console log.url. And if you save it and go to your web page, refresh it, run it, and then inspect, you can see down right here that it logs the API call. This is the whole call after the strings have all been concatenated and all that good stuff. And it looks correct. So if you're having problems and you're not sure if your call is right, log it out the console and check it. That is a huge way, a good way to troubleshoot. So we got that. Now we need to fetch the response from that API call. Or we hadn't even made the API call. This is the API call. We're going to fetch that URL. Then we want to take that response and forward it over to the function JSON method function, whatever you want to call it. This will give us a JSON, or we'll parse the JSON. Then we'll take that data and we're going to forward that to the document, or part of it to the document. Not get element by ID and put the address. And then we want the inner HTML. And that is going to be equal to data.results. It's an array. Results is an array. It's the first one. And it's the one that's formatted. So that may be a little confusing to you. What is going on with my screens? Geolocation, yeah. I might have an extra parentheses in there. Okay. I think I put this in parentheses. I'm not sure why. So if you take this, if you go back to your web page in your console and you see this right here, you think you can click on it and it'll open up the API call. This is what your response is. This is what you're trying to ingest with the code that we just wrote. And you can see there's a ton of crap in here. But we're looking for, we called the whole thing, we got a response back. We made sure it was a JSON response. We then called that response data. We gave it a name. It's just data. That's what this is doing right here. So the response is now called data, and we're going to send the data.results, the first one in the array, .formatted to the HTML. To understand that, we call this whole thing data. Here's the results tab right here. So the first dot results means, okay, we need to go into this array, and then 0, the first element, and then we need to go down to the, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in here. Currency, it tells you what currency they use, where you're at, and the last one I did was Brazil. I still have my VPN set to Brazil. So, I mean, it gives you a million things in here, but what we want, where did it go? Formatted, all the way down here. We want this formatted address, and that's what this string is right here. Oh, you can't even see it. You can't even see it. Scroll all the way down to formatted. So that line of code we did, we called the whole thing data. Then we want it to go into the results array, into the first index, and then down to formatted, wherever that is. And it's going to give us this right here. And this is what it'll put in the inner HTML of that div right there. I hope you understand that. I know it's a little confusing when we start doing all these dots. But if you save that and you go back to your new little application, refresh that. Where am I? Hit allow. And there it goes. It populates. It does take a second to run that. And again, this data is not magically populated. This data comes from a database somewhere. Nothing's magic. It's all stored information. That's why it's difficult. You almost have to use an API or third-party library, because I don't know how many coordinates and how many details about a place you can store yourself. But unless you have complete information, it doesn't work. Now, maybe if you just needed to, if you owned a business with several locations, you could have your own database with those business locations, but you still need to use the Google Maps API. For anyone that wanted to use Google Maps, they'd go to Google Maps, or they'd use an application, and your database would populate little pins where your stuff is, but you still need to kind of integrate everything. But this is something simple we can do without a whole lot of money being spent or a whole giant learning curve to get into Google APIs. So that's that. And if you want, you should probably make it a little better. And then just do your own CSS. Do your own CSS. And make it look nice. And there you have it. That's this week's project. Do something, just do a little location stuff. This is fine. If you want to go on and use Google Maps, be my guest. Turn in something that does something similar. Longitude, latitude, and an address. And that's great. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Thank you.